So, our theme for today, the third Sunday of Advent, is joy. And so I come up with this: fight or flight. A couple of people jumping for joy. The thing is, everywhere we look at the moment, there seems to be doom and gloom. Even at this time of year, even now around the world, there is fighting, killing, people being trafficked, rights being trampled upon. It seems at every turn there is a new story about some tragedy or some atrocity. And we aren't immune to it here in Brighton and Hove, a city that prides itself on being welcoming, accepting of diversity and open-minded. Even here there is a growing sense of fear and hatred. Following Brexit, there has been a rise in racial violence, in insults and assaults against anyone that doesn't look the same, sound the same, even dress the same as the community they find themselves in. But let's not just blame Brexit. Let's be honest. Even before that vote, this stuff was going on here. It may have been overshadowed and largely ignored because of all the hype about the refugee crisis. But Brexit just seems to have given more people an excuse to kick off. And the fear and hatred that was largely hidden has bubbled to the surface. After all, I'm sure we can all think of times when fearmongers have risen to prominence and carried with them a mob of people who would normally not even think of swearing at someone, let alone chanting about throwing them into the sea. We are in a time of great unrest, huge upheaval, and with that comes fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the future. And some people tap into that fear. Connect with the inner demons that we all have and give them power over our more humane, conscious selves. It is so easy just to follow along, buy into the rhetoric, believe the hype, and allow our own personal fears to override our common sense and drive us down a very dark path. But I like to think we are more than our fears. We are better than those base drives that call us to attack others to make ourselves feel better. To laugh at and insult those who are different, just because they are different. Maybe because we secretly wish we had the courage to be that different. When fear raises its ugly head, there are two very basic human responses: fight or flight. Adrenaline pumps into us, and we react in one of those two ways. I think that if we choose flight, we lose something of ourselves, and we become one of the mob, hiding from what is right and decent, by following the loudest voice, the most persuasive argument of the time, which tends to be the one that feeds into our fears, that confirms our already held darkest thoughts. We in some ways become less than we were, and we then add shame and regret to our inner demons. However, if we are able to choose fight, if we can stand our ground and face those fears and see them for what they are, our own insecurities, our own doubts, and not the fault of anyone, then we not only see the hate mongers for what they truly are, but we retain that humane, loving part of ourselves. We become more courageous. And faith is a huge part of that. It's not a superpower. It's not going to enable us to fly, I'm afraid, although that would be awesome. We can't change people's minds by merely touching our temples and staring at them. And yes, I truly envy Dr. Xavier from the X-Men for that. But we can influence people by standing up, by our manner, by our behaviours. By now, I guess some of you, or maybe all of you, are probably thinking, for a sermon on joy, this is a bit of a downer. Where's the joy? So, I want to share with you a few thoughts I had this week on joy. It occurs to me that joy is actually highly contagious. Even more so than fear and hatred. As I said, we've all seen examples of how mob mentality can grow. But it seems to me that it takes effort. It takes a protagonist to start it. It takes someone to work actually quite hard to get it to the momentum where it takes over an entire group, to have the effect they wanted. Whereas my experience of joy is that it takes very little effort. It takes little effort to grow. Joy seems instantly contagious and incredibly attractive. It draws people to you, to be with you, to be a part of that joy. Whereas with hate, there is always a separation between you and the others around you. Maybe because some people are wishing they just weren't there. This was kind of brought home to me when SJ and I went to babysit our nieces yesterday. When we arrived, the youngest of the three stood there with a big smile on her face and started giggling and said, "It's silly Uncle Andrew." And the grin and the joy that she showed was so infectious that I couldn't help but feel an uplift. Straight away, my mood lightened, and I had a big stupid grin on my face. It was a spark of joy that immediately brightened my mood. Children are such a source of that joy. They see the world as a thing of wonder, of mystery, of fun. An empty box becomes an entire playground. Just look at the people around you when you see a child doing something that makes you smile, and see how many others are smiling too. So I believe that joy is contagious, that it spreads without effort. But if that is the case, then why isn't the whole world joyful? Maybe it's because sometimes fear is easier. Fear is something you can retreat into. It's a place to hide. Whereas joy takes a kind of courage. It takes real courage to ignore your fears and step out of the shadows, to face your own demons, and to not only choose joy, but to demonstrate openly your choice over that comfortable old blanket of woe is me, the world's going to hell, all the government are insane. And so I've got a video clip. And I saw this video clip first time a few years ago. And as soon as I started writing the sermon, it came back to me. And I thought this just so clearly expresses what I was kind of talking about. It starts with this guy dancing in a field on his own at a festival. Now, I don't know about you, but stepping out of a huge crowd and then just dancing like that would fill me with absolute dread. But this guy's so full of joy and fun that he just does it, leaving all his fears behind. It's what happens next that really grabbed me. The second guy joins in. And straight away, you can see the grins are getting much bigger, and the joy is feeding on itself, and it's growing between them. And if you ignore the silky dance moves, it becomes really attractive. Joy is like a magnet, it pulls people to it. And gradually, as we'll see shortly, they get joined by more people. See, there's a third. And the joy that they're showing at dancing attracts more people out of the crowd. And so they rapidly grow in number, and the joy spreads. Joy seems to have this ability to bring people together and draw people in a positive way, a way that adds to their lives, that gives them courage to step out of a crowd of thousands and dance like a loon. Finally, it reaches a point where even the most timid of people are drawn into it because they see all this and they want that feeling. They realise that by not dancing, by not joining in, they are missing an incredible experience. But other than a good workout, what do they get from this? They get an incredible memory. A memory of true joy. A memory that can be revisited, thanks to YouTube, when they are down. A memory they can share with people that weren't there, with others they meet. And in that way, spread that feeling of joy. And all of this started in a field with one joy-filled and courageous person. Now, I can't help but draw parallels with faith on this. After all, isn't that how we as Christians started? One person stepped out and started doing things that some people thought were crazy. Until they saw the effect they had, then they wanted to join in. They wanted to be a part of it, to feel what that person felt, to see the things that he saw, to experience the joy of being part of something bigger than their fears, to feel real joy and real love, real hope, real peace. So I started by thinking that joy takes courage. But perhaps it's more than that. Perhaps what I should say is that it takes courage to share joy. To take whatever joy we find and offer it freely to those around us. After all, it is human nature that when you have something precious, to want to hold on to it, to hold it tight, to keep it to yourself, to guard it. And what could be more precious than joy, than your own happiness? But like the man dancing alone in the field, we should have the courage to freely share our joy with anyone that needs it. God loves us unconditionally. So as children of God, shouldn't we share the joy we find in that freely and unconditionally? Then maybe like the man in the field, people will see our joy and be drawn to it, want to feel it too, want to be a part of something bigger than their fears. And in doing so, as we saw in the video, will add even more to our joy. It isn't a one-way street. Then if, as I believe, joy is contagious, who knows how far it will spread and what incredible things will happen. So in this time of fear and uncertainty, in this atmosphere of darkness and hatred, will you fight and share the joy of God's love freely and unconditionally? Or will you choose flight and follow your inner demons? I, for one, want to be like the man in the field. And even if it means dancing alone, I will pray every day for the courage to keep on dancing.